Hello, dear viewers. Thank you so much for joining me today. Well, today I want to read on the kids that were separated from their parents at the border. And apparently that's not happening as nearly at the rate it was, but yet there are still some cases where if they can charge the parents with a crime other than crossing the border, they're able to separate them. So anyway, we have come across some new details about the meeting in which that was decided, and it definitely was. It came down from Trump and Sessions and Stephen Miller. This is what we're going to do. We're going to separate the children from the parents so they learn not to come. Punish them, scare them. And even children who are nursing babies, it doesn't matter. They're getting separated. We've decided now. And so when they changed it and they said, we just changed the law. I mean, this is a crime, them coming across, not at a certain point, and all that's not true anyway. But we changed that. So people who come over the border in trouble with the law, of course, they're going to be detained. And that was all lies. And Kirstjen Nielsen apparently objected to the decision. She voted no, and I don't know why there was a vote. She was the head of that department. She shouldn't have been up for a vote. But she voted no, but then she told a lot of lies to pull it off and try to cover it up and make it seem like it wasn't anything out of the ordinary or motivated by racism or cruelty, when in fact it was. So we have almost 500 children who still haven't gotten in touch with their parents because 2/3 of the parents of these children separated from their parents at the border were sent back, were deported, even though they were seeking asylum and saying it would be dangerous for them to go back there. And now almost 500 of them cannot be located. Nobody knows where they are. So I want to read on this. Spirit, what should we know about this situation? How is this going to unfold? Yeah, the Wheel of Fortune, of course. So it's yet another thing that tells us it's a new beginning. This is a new reckoning. This is a new time to get corruption out of government. And it's being exposed. And it's yet another thing that's going to bring in the new era. All right, but challenge, the 8 of Swords. So the challenge is there are still many immigrants still being detained, and they shouldn't be. That's still happening. That's still happening. They're still being detained, and they're being detained even with threat of COVID a lot of times. So it's still happening. The challenge is it's still happening. We want to go back and help these kids, but we've got something to deal with here too. Okay, underneath, Judgment Angel. Judgment will fall. Judgment will fall hard on this administration for this policy. And in fact, I've seen that those detention centers will be referred to as concentration camps in the future. History will remember them as this is a dark time, when the U.S. again detained people in concentration camps. This time not American citizens, but does it matter? No. That just makes me sad, but it is a tremendously sad situation. This card has come up a lot for refugees. The 5 of Coins in the past. There are a lot of refugees. We have to deal with that. This isn't in isolation, is what I'm hearing. There have been a lot of refugees out of many different countries trying to find safety and asylum in different countries, not just in the U.S. and the whole world, not the whole world, but so much of the world has become less friendly to the refugee, to the immigrant. So this is a phenomenon that's also having to do with, I don't know, breakdowns in morality, values like empathy and compassion being seen as weak by too many, psychopathy. I mean, really, the amoral profit motive that just wants the profit and wants the power and wants the money, and who cares values? What's that got to do with anything? Morals. There's so much of our world and so much of the power in our world operating in an amoral system that makes no apology for being amoral. So we see it through our culture, we see it in media, we see it. It's not just this thing, and it's not just the US, and it's not just, we have a problem. We have a problem. We could be a kinder and gentler world. We are entering a time when technology should eliminate starvation. It's good enough. It's enough. It's abundant enough to, yes, provide energy and not pollute the environment. We do have the means. It's just, it's time for a new, more compassionate kind of way of governing. It really is. Above it all, we have the 10 of coins. Money, financial security, yeah, and I've just talked about that. But also I'm reminded, growing income inequality makes this all worse, all these troubles worse, because that's when people don't feel like they can afford to have compassion for the refugee. They don't feel like they can afford that for the asylum seeker. And it's silly. You know, you can look at 100 charts that say that the refugees and asylum seekers don't damage the economy of the nations that they enter. And in fact, what could damage the economies of most Western nations is the demographic shifts that are coming up. Not enough new people willing to work, pay taxes. So, I mean, it's not rational, but that income inequality and sense of insecurity for people's families. Like, I am not sure my own kids are going to have enough as they grow up. There's nothing for those that aren't ours, you know, that kind of thing. We're a nation of immigrants, U.S. is, and that's what I love that about the U.S. Anyway, in the near future, we have the 2 of Wands. Yes, I saw this. I was doing a reading on this. So the 2 of Wands is those parents who have been separated. There will be money put into and time and effort put into trying to track them down. So that is encouraging in the coming years. But, you know, nothing can replace what they've lost, and nothing can replace what the children have lost already. But, you know, what about the kids too, Spirit? And then we have the Empress down at the root of the matter, the mother, you know, the mother-child bond. It's so damaging to those children to have that severed father-child bond. A lot of these were fathers who were single parents taking the children over too. Yeah, okay, so that's hard. Yeah, the 6 of coins in the home environment. That means just a little is given. A little is given, not a lot. Okay. And hopes and fears, 8 of coins. We hope we learn from this. Outcome, 3 of cups. This is an end to these policies. This is an end to these policies is coming. It really is. So because we're hearing that, yeah, sure, certainly find those parents, but, you know, this stuff is still going on. We need an end to those policies. And this card I a lot of times get as Democrats celebrating because they've gotten a lot more power in government. So let's see, clarifier is the 8 of Cups when Trump leaves. When Trump leaves, we will be celebrating. We will be able, this will be a main priority for ending this kind of policy that it does separate too many families. It detains people unnecessarily. Yeah, and I know, you know, there was the idea that the asylum seekers would wait so long for a court date that they'd already put down roots here in the U.S. and maybe had children here in the U.S. and it could take years, you know, and then what if they were denied asylum at that point? Do they go back? Probably not, because now they put down there were issues, but the answer to that was not scare the heck out of these immigrants and discourage them from seeking asylum here by taking their children, you know, because somehow we had plenty of money to do that, and detention centers and walls, and we didn't have enough money to get more judges and courts for these, to hear these cases, but we had plenty of money for all this other nonsense that just did harm. Yeah. And we've got the hope, the star, the hope, the star. I also see successful lawsuits in the future by some of these children, many of these children, and people who represent them. It might be a class action, actually, now that I think about it. It really may be a class action. But I do see it's not done costing the Americans money. All these efforts to avoid having to help a refugee, and it's going to cost and cost and cost and cost. And it should, because it's just destructive, this approach. But will there be a time when, let's ask that. See, the thing in the U.S. is we did have a lot of illegal immigration, especially in the early 2000s, late 90s, the 90s, the early 2000s, there was a big wave. Well, the thing is, a lot of these folks were coming from Mexico, and they were working, and they were doing jobs that, frankly, a lot of Americans were not willing to do. They weren't getting hired to do those jobs. They didn't want those jobs. They weren't applying. And so the labor was needed. And there was a lot of big businesses actually actively recruiting Mexicans to come illegally to the U.S. And they were benefiting. They were benefiting more than anybody because they didn't have to pay payroll tax. They didn't have to, this was all payment under the table. They didn't have to pay workers' comp. They didn't have to pay unemployment insurance. They didn't have to pay a fair wage. They didn't have to do any of that. They didn't have to worry if they had a lot of power there, right? And so for many years, this just went on. And it really did serve the interests of some very wealthy people. When it could have been argued that we needed those immigrants. Obviously, our country is growing. We need immigration. It could have been argued. But no, very, very little in the way of legal immigration was occurring. Very few paths. And so Barack Obama, of course, said, well, he's interested in getting a legal path to immigration for these families. But now, where are we? We have a lot of damage to undo. Will we have more legal immigration? Because I think we really do need it, you guys. If you listen to the economists, the demographic cliff is a big issue, right? I think we need immigrants, and people are, especially millennials, are not having as many children because of income inequality. It's become hard to afford to have children. Okay, we should be hopeful about immigration. The 10 of coins. At some point, the very wealthy are going to say, hey, this benefits us. Okay. The 8 but there is, it's going to be a while. It's going to be a delay because there is still this idea that we can't move forward. There's still a lot of misinformation out there about immigration where people just aren't smart about it. They're not smart about how they're looking at it. So, yeah, it might be a while, is what I'm getting. All right, what about these children? What about all the children that were separated? What should we know about them, Spirit? Some of them are in foster care here in the U.S. Some are with sponsors, which may have been relatives here in the U.S. That really feels heavy, heavy, heavy. 4 of coins, 7 of coins. They're not secure enough, but they are hanging in there, and they are still needing our help. And again, I'm hearing the refugees coming in, the refugees coming in. There must be more going on at the border than we know. There's still more happening. A lot of the damage to the children has been done, and it could be they could be given great care and great efforts to reunite them with family. That could be one thing that's done. But I keep hearing there's still stuff going on down there that is horrific, that is horrendous. It's not adequately policed. I think there still are, once in a while you hear of a corrupt border agent. They don't have a ton of training. It doesn't take a lot of certification. So once in a while you hear of a corrupt border agent, cooperating with coyotes to traffic people. So I think there's more of that going on than we know. I just feel this get down to the, look. This issue isn't resolved. It's far from. All right. Oh, Spirit, please protect them. All right. Well, yeah. And there's still so many in detention centers. Okay. I'm going to also put in the first comment, I'm going to put links for how to help the asylum seekers at the border. Maybe help them with their legal cases. So many attorneys have volunteered to help. The Civil Liberties Union has offered some help for their legal rights. Page of Swords. There are going to be some amazing children coming out of this who grow up and talk about their experience as teenagers. Wow. Yeah, still pay attention to the refugees coming in. That's what I keep getting. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I thank you all so very much. And I know that the viewers, I know that all of you have this on your heart for a long, long time. And it's so hard because we do have empathy and compassion and it makes us better people. At the same time, we have to watch it if we are empathetic people because we can't carry them around in our thoughts all the time because that empathy doesn't help them. That empathy, it may drain us and it may not help them. So we do have to be careful. If we do think of them, and we do, to ask Spirit to just wrap them in love and warmth and light and security and abundance and ask that for them. And then let them go. Let them go with blessings and light and love. And we do what we can to talk to our governmental officials and perhaps donate if you can to keep the issue alive because obviously it needs to be still looked at a lot. So, all right. Well, I thank you all so very, very much. Take care. Bye-bye.